Hi, my name is Brady Preston. I'm a catcher for the Lafayette Jefferson Broncos. I hit the first home run at the new Loeb Stadium, and you are watching Baseball Across Indiana.
Gentlemen, welcome to another week of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. It is February 27th. These two good-looking fellas here with me. We've got Sweet Lou coming out of Lafayette, and Steve Craw is up in Elkhart at the perch where he gets to see the bird's eye view from the north to see all the scene in Indiana. I think Mark is down catching fish in Arizona, isn't he, this week, fellas? And Chris was tied up as well. But I know Mark was golfing down there in Arizona. It's like 70 degrees or something down there. But we got a pretty good show for you guys. Let's get right to it. That was Jeff. Tell us about that guy we just saw right there, because I think that's a cool story.
Well, that guy is the starting catcher, Brady Preston. He's a senior at Lafayette Jeff High School. He's a three-sport athlete, which was my final out subject a couple of weeks ago, and he's a current example. He's the starting quarterback for the Lafayette Jeff football team. He's signed with the Bulldogs of Butler, so we're going to see a lot of Brady down the road here locally. Well, hopefully we can get some bus loads down to Indianapolis to see him play football for the Butler Bulldogs. He also is a starting forward for the Lafayette Jeff basketball team, and he's also the starting catcher for the Lafayette Jeff baseball team. And I talked to him Friday night from Terre Haute North, and real excited about getting started with our new head coach Clayton Richard, former Major League Baseball player. So start the sectional this week in basketball. Lafayette Jeff's playing at Logan Sport, and we're going to play our county rival, the McCutcheon Mavericks, in the first game on Tuesday night from the Berry Bowl in Logan Sport. So very fine gentleman. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Kind of guy. He ought to be. Both his parents are principals. His wife, or his not his wife, his mother. Excuse me. His mother is elementary school principal here in Lafayette, and Mark, his dad, is the principal at Lafayette Jeff High School. Great guy. Just do anything for you, and just a really good guy.
Well, I'll tell you, I had to put that. That actually, he was. I mentioned that story in the 2021 top stories about him hitting that first ever home run in Loeb Stadium. Because how cool is that? You can never take that away. That is a record. If you're the first to do something, I don't care what it is, you can never take it away. And the first to hit a home run in that new Loeb Stadium, that's stellar. What a great story. And it's good to hear. What a great kid. Just real quick, Steve, before we keep going around the horn here and talking about the week, folks, stick around because we're going to talk recap of the college baseball scene throughout last week, including the games today. Kind of a rough week for the Big Ten, but not this Big Ten. That's why we're wearing that today. And but we've got a great thing lined up that Jeff headed up for us. Then Steve chimed in. They got together and put together a great group of umpires, and we got to really take a deep dive into the umpire scene across Indiana and beyond that. These guys, they just like everybody else, you'll hear it. They talked about how they started doing, T-ball and stuff like that. Now they're doing Division I games. They're doing national championship games. Stick around for that. It's going to be great. And speaking of getting some work done here, Steve. Tell us, you put out more articles this week. I think Twitter might have flagged me for over tweeting if I retweeted all those things. How many articles did you put out this week?
Six.
Six.
My goal is to do one a day, through Monday through Saturday. Usually I can do Monday through Friday. So six is that's a pretty good week.
Pretty good week. I'll tell you what, for folks, before we started this show today, just so like 5 minutes ago, you understand, I had a busy weekend. Jeff was traveling all day. He was on the road. So, usually, throughout the week we keep tabs on all the scores and everything like that. And today, I got to tell you, I had nothing done. Jeff saw a few games. We didn't have much done. Steve Crawl came out and was like, yeah, I've got every score of every game. So let's just go from there. So, Steve, we appreciate your tireless efforts here. Speaking around the horn, I'll tell you, I went around the horn a little bit this week around the Twitter horn. I want to highlight this hashtag again as we move forward, that BAI this week. If you follow either our baseball across Indiana, I about to say baseball across in America there, Jeff. You got me saying that. Baseball across Indiana Twitter page of Home Plate BAI, or if you follow, me, Jeff, or Steve on Twitter, you'll probably see all the BAI this week hashtag. What we do when we see something that we want to mention on the show, we'll put that BAI, we'll either retweet it or we'll comment. We'll put that BAI this week hashtag on there, and that helps us to go back and find all those stories that we want to cover throughout the week. And if you're posting a story, we talked about this last week too, you can use that hashtag or just tag us, tag that Home Plate BAI Twitter page there, and we will see it, and we'll make sure we cover all the good stories, because guys, like we said at the beginning, our whole goal in this is to cover baseball in the state of Indiana. And this is one way we're doing it. Couple of them that I tagged this week. Benton Central, some alumni from Benton Central had some good weeks this week. Peyton Hall, a 2009 graduate, or 2019, he went 4 for 5 with a single and 2 doubles and a triple, with 4 ribbies and 4 runs for Oakland City this week, and they beat the Grace Tigers. That's not the Grace Lancers. That's not our Indiana Grace. Grace Tigers are up in Michigan. And another Benton Central alumni, Alex Thurston, a 2020 grad, was 4 for 7 with 2 runs for Valpo's doubleheader sweep of Alabama A&M this week. So good week for some former Bison there. I just saw this the other day. Did you guys see this? I think I pulled a vertebrae in my back just watching this. This is Max Clark. This is the guy that we all know that we're watching for the next couple years, putting up 500 pounds on the bench. Not too bad for a junior. I don't think Jeff and Steve, I don't think all three of us could rip that thing up there. Yeah, I don't think all three of us could pick that up right now.
We can bench 500. I'm really, but 500 anything is impressive.
Right, exactly. And of course, the Reed Andrews, who runs the University High School Twitter page, reminded me that Rhys Sharp got his first start. Of course, his first appearance was last week, a pretty good performance. His first start was today. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. Of course, Rhys Sharp, if you remember, we talked about him last week. He was a senior at university in 2019, I believe it was, where he set the state record for strikeouts in the state finals. Had a pretty good outing today. Pitched 3 innings. He had 3 Ks, so not bad. Of course, IU. I think he did better than IU. He had 5 runs against him, but for a first outing, not bad. And you're playing Stanford. And I think Stanford handled their business there. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. First of all, on this one right here, Kyle Charters. If you don't follow him on Twitter. You see his Twitter feed there. He runs the Big Ten baseball podcast, the Big it's B1G. I can't remember the podcast, but look him up. It's linked there for the Purdue podcast, Purdue baseball podcast, as well as the Big Ten podcast. And this guy knows his stuff. He's a good follow. He put an interesting stat out here that I saw. Purdue, as of yesterday, were 30 of 30 in stolen bases this year. He put, while unluckily keep up that rate, it puts Boilermakers on a pace for 280. I mean, that's pretty neat stat. Go ahead, Steve.
They're 35 and 35 through today, so they're still.
They had 5 more today.
Yeah, they got 5 more today. Mm-hmm.
Where's Goff getting all this speed at? That's pretty impressive. I think I got another one here. Oh yeah, I got to mention this one. I reached out to a coach earlier in the week for the St. Joe. There's no high school baseball yet, but I want to find a way to get high school baseball on this show every week. This is the St. Joe baseball tug of war champions for this past week, and I told Coach I'd name drop them to make sure he sent me the names. It's freshman Luke Turner. My eyes are getting bad here. Sophomore Caleb Smith, senior Jack Duddleson, Junior Alex Barrera, Senior Bryant Bagunya, Junior Marvin Lopez, Freshman Joe Washburn, Freshman Jay Newbear, I'm probably butchering that, Jay, sorry, buddy, and Junior Parker Lee. St. Joe baseball tug-of-war champions. Doesn't get any better than that, fellas.
John Smolinski, coach at St. Joe.
Yes. Guys, anything else before we start digging in? We've got about 20 minutes. We're going to start to try to stay on track. Of course, I say that every week, but we're going to try to stay on track. But Jeff, I see you leaning in. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wanting to mention when everybody hits their knees tonight, I know that there's a deadline for Major League Baseball. I think it's midnight tomorrow to get this collective bargaining agreement signed. I haven't heard what happened today. I know things were far apart as of yesterday, but on my travel around the state of Indiana today, I did hear they were going to meet at 1:00. So when everybody hits their knees, because if they don't get this done as of tomorrow at midnight, then there's going to be some opening games and they're not going to take place. And it's just real sad. So I don't want to give a burden of bad news on our show, but just say a prayer for both the owners and the players that we get this thing squared away.
Absolutely.
And
I'll tell you what, if you're doing some prayers, hang around to the end. We're gonna talk on the final out. Some other things you can add to your list for this evening. Guys, you ready? We'll go into and start covering the college scene for this week. What do you think?
Let's do it.
This here's the schedules, and I appreciate once again we appreciate Steve's legwork in this, helping us get this done. First thing you see right there, look at that lid I'm wearing today. Isn't that a beauty right there? I got this lid. Coach Media gave me this hat when I was working on the college baseball collection. I got to tell you a real quick story about this because it relates to a couple of these teams on here. Obviously Purdue, but I'm sitting there waiting on Coach Media. Well, he wasn't a coach at the time. He was the director of baseball operations. He's got a different role there now. But and Coach Goff, he loves Coach Media. But I'm sitting there waiting as he's doing some things with the players, and I start talking to this guy for about a half an hour. And I'm thinking, man, this guy really knows baseball. He really knows his stuff. And, it's one of those things where two guys just start talking. They don't mention names or anything like that. About a half an hour into it, I started talking about the project he was on. He's like, oh, that's really cool. I need to get you a McCutcheon hat. I'm like, oh, really? It was the current coach for McCutcheon, now the current coach of Purdue Fort Wayne, and the son of the legendary Ken Schreiber. I was sitting there talking to Doug Schreiber for a half an hour and didn't even realize who I was talking to. I told him myself, I call myself a baseball fan. That's kind of shameful. But that's how I got this lid, and I had to wear it today because the Boilers are representing right there at 8-0. And, it was a tough week for the Big Ten. For sure. We talked about IU earlier. They got blanked pretty hard today. I think I've got that score wrong. I've got that this week wrong right there on IU. IU is 1-5, but this week I think they were 1-2, weren't they, or 1-3?
IU was one. They were 1-2.
They were 1-2 this week. That's right, because they won the game.
Louisiana Lafayette, and they lost Arkansas and Stanford.
Yep, and I'll tell you about that Arkansas team. They started out the year ranked number 2 in the country, but they lost their stud pitcher. They lost their ace, so they might be starting to fall. I don't know. I was looking at the Stanford because Stanford, they handled IU pretty strongly. And so I was checking out the score and watching a little bit of the Stanford and Arkansas game. Sorry, I lost track. I was trying to see if there was a score real quick on d1baseball.com, by the way, which is a great place to follow. But Stanford was handling their business versus Arkansas as well. Now, Arkansas has more than that one ace pitcher. They wouldn't have been, I'm trying to see the score here, they would have been higher than or lower than number 2 in the country. But that tells you what kind of team Stanford is. And I say all that to say, IU, you've took some lumps, but you started out the year in a very tough tournament. down there in that Round Rock Classic in Texas, and Stanford, Arkansas, even Louisiana Lafayette. They're starting out the season tough. One other I want to mention on here, guys, that just interests me. All of them do, but ISU went 3-0 this week, including blanking Minnesota twice. Well, not blanking them, but they beat Minnesota twice. So ISU's got it going on too. They're 5-2, 3-0 this week. Butler's starting to turn it around. After going 0-3, they've got it back to 3-3. Last week, Steve, we talked about, we're talking Ball State as we move up the list there. Last week we talked about the kid from Mount Vernon,
Hunter
Dobbins, and I think he said he had 4 home runs last week, but he might be in a cast. You said?
I saw a Twitter video of him swinging a bat with a cast on his hand. Said 8 weeks, and it was printed. I think his father was in the post of the video. So.
Yeah. Well, he's a young kid. He's young, so that's good. But I tell you, he's on my radar. Another one, the Lux kid that I think you said went to Lake Central. He's playing at Duke now.
Yeah.
Damian Lux, I think it is. I know his last name's Lux. He's playing for Duke, and he's a Lake Central kid. And Duke almost got 10-run ruled today. And I'm so bad with names. Who did Duke play today? I can't remember, but they almost got 10. Oh, Baylor. Duke and Baylor, and Baylor's good. Don't get me wrong. Baylor's really good, but they almost 10-run ruled Duke, and Duke is strong. But Lux went in this week. I think he was in the last 2 games, he was 4 for 6, right around there. He was 2 for 2 today before he hit into an error, and so I don't know what he ended up. But another Indiana kid there that's representing well. Any other highlights stand out for you guys on the D1 scene?
D1. Well, you talked about Purdue's 8-0 start. Their top hitter so far is Evan Albrecht, and he's hitting .462 through those 8 games. He's got 6 or 6 stolen bases, and Curtis Washington Jr. is 7 of 7 swiping bags, and he's hitting .375. Cam Thompson's knocked in 13 runs, and their top pitcher so far has been Jackson Smeltz. He's 2-0 with a 1.07 ERA, 18 Ks, 4 walks, and 9 1/3 innings. That's just the boy.
He's an Indiana tie, isn't he, Smeltz?
Yes.
I might step in here and tell you he's a McCutcheon Maverick.
Yeah, McCutcheon.
Okay. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I was looking
He didn't have to travel far to go to college.
Yeah. Let's take a look real quick. That was this week. Let's take a look at next week's schedule. And, a lot of these stand out. And I tell you, one of them, the first one that hits me is next Friday, Notre Dame versus Illinois. And I think Notre Dame's starting to turn into the Notre Dame team that everybody thought they were going to be. They started the year kind of, running pretty well. Hit it. They lost to Delaware. That's why I love baseball. But why I don't understand it. Notre Dame does so well, but then they lose to Delaware. So that Notre Dame Illinois game has got my attention. And there was one I was trying to recall that is the first home game coming up. It's not yet, but I'll tell you what. Indiana State. Yeah. Okay. There it is. Next Sunday, folks, you need to mark your calendars for this. This is, in my opinion, absolutely the game of the week and one of the top games, I think, in the country. And that's going to be Indiana State versus Maryland. And Maryland, I'll tell you what, they're all veterans. They're all seniors. They've got like 3 seniors and they're a very seasoned, experienced team. They don't have projectable talent. They've got talent that's proven itself, and they're on a lot of people's radar. And I think Indiana State's starting to get that way too. So for me, that's the game of the week. I don't know if you guys have any that stand out to you before we move on to the D2 scene. Oh, there is one I forgot to mention, though. How exciting is this going to be? Friday, March 4th, Purdue versus Manchester. I totally overlooked that one when I was looking at the season schedules, earlier in the year, looking at the whole season schedule. You got Purdue, or not Purdue, Butler versus Manchester. Baseball fans in Indiana, that's another one. Butler versus Manchester. You've got to check that one out. Those are the two must-see games for me. Butler versus Manchester on Wednesday, and then on Saturday, ISU and Maryland. Wow, that's some good games. Of course, going down the list there, you've got, also next Saturday, Notre Dame and Michigan State. So that's another one that's got to be on your radar for sure. Let's look at the D2 scene. We've got 3 D2 schools in Indiana and USI. Did I type that in there right? 2-0, 6-0? I don't think I did. University of Southern Indiana is not 6-0. Steve, remind me. They're 5-6. 5. What are they? Tell me what USI is. What is USI?
USI's live programming. I think they're 6-0. I think you're right. I think they are 6-0.
Are they 6-0? I thought they had 2 or 3 losses, but I could be wrong. Wow. I'm gonna
Southern Indiana Screaming Eagles, soon to be D1. They're 6-0. They are 6-0.
They are 6-0. Well, while you're talking there, while you're giving us your scores and highlights for the week, I am going to look up and see who USI. I want to look on their schedule here real quick. USI.
There wasn't that many D2 games this week because we got 3 schools in D2 in the state, and there were some weather issues. But Indy lost 3 games to Northwood out of Michigan, 11-6 and 5-4 Saturday and 9-4 today. And Southern Indiana beat Lake Erie 12-4 and 8 yesterday and 8-3 today.
Yep, and you are right. They are. I'm gonna see if I can bring this over here real quick. Can you guys see that schedule?
Yes.
And yeah, they are a legit 6-0. Starting out the season with 3 straight wins versus Young Harris College, 1 postponed versus Lake Erie, and then 2 more wins. They've got them again tomorrow, and then they've got some home games, folks. If I'm looking at this schedule right here, you're looking at 6-0 University of Southern Indiana, and you know what stands out to me right here? The games. They're in Evansville. Coming up next week, they've got a home game on Monday, a home game on Friday, home game Saturday, a doubleheader home game Saturday before they head back out to Florida. So, man, what a way they are starting the season. Of course, we're kind of accustomed to that. They're USI. They're not surprising anybody with that kind of record, the way they've been the last few years. So good catch there, Steve. Anything before we move on to D3? We got about 5-6 minutes before we turn it over to the umpires.
Dan, I just want to say, if anybody's listening out or watching our show, get out and watch some of these games. Yeah. If you got college in your area, we're encouraging baseball. Get out and see some good baseball here in the state of Indiana.
There you go. And bring your cell phone, get some good footage, post it on Twitter, and tag us, and we'll use it.
Sounds like a plan.
poor boy ESPN Plus right there. So let's move on to D3. And here's, we've got Earlham and Franklin starting out 3-0. It's early in the season. Rose-Hulman got the new coach there, starting out 2-0. That's got to be a nice feeling for him, starting out 2-0 with a new program. But Anderson had kind of a tough week. Hanover and Manchester just got started, so that 0-2 doesn't mean much. D3 season really is just getting started. You guys got any, Steve? You got any highlights?
Well, Franklin's Logan Dempkovich already has a couple of home runs, and so does DePauw's Cameron Macon. I mean, it's early in the season, but through the first four games, Macon was hitting .563. That's about 300 less than Jeff did as a senior in high school. But 2 homers, 9 RBIs, 8 runs scored. So they've been knocking the fences down. The DePauw Tigers have been.
Nice.
And then you said at Rose-Hulman, Adam Rosen era started today, and they won both of their games. So he's off to
That's right.
fighting
A
engineers.
double hitter to start his career for Rose-Hulman. I'll tell you what, Rose-Hulman got a good one there. He was at they were ranked. What school was he at last year? Columbia?
Missouri St. Louis.
Missouri St. Louis, and they were at one point ranked number 1 in the country. So I mean, Rose-Hulman got a good find there. A lot of exciting stuff going on for the future there. Let's go on to NAIA. I think we don't have the totals for this week yet, but one thing I'm looking at, look at the number of games. Let's compare that to what we just saw in D3 versus what you're seeing right now in NAIA. So you young kids, remember, you're wanting to play baseball. You're wanting to get some games in. NCAA is not the only game in town. Look at the number of games these NAIA teams are playing, and they play some good talent too. Looking off the top of my head right there, Oakland City, a former D2 program, now NAIA, they're 11-4. And a second-year coach there after he retired a couple years ago, and I just lost his name. Their previous coach.
T. Ray Fletcher.
Yes. Yep. And He that was 2 years ago, so he's got things going in the right direction. Taylor at 9-6, Grace at 5-7. They're starting to turn it around. Bethel is 16 games already. Man, that is nuts. And Calumet St. Joe just got started. The Crimson Wave, one of the best college baseball hats in the country, by the way. Steve, what about some highlights, or Jeff, either one of you highlights from the NAIA scene?
Well, you talked about Taylor, and they played all these games, but T.J. Bass. He is from Greenwood. His dad has been Andy's been the head coach at Greenwood Community High School.
Oh, that's his son. I didn't put the math together. Okay.
Yeah,
good tie-in.
That's the tie-in. So far, he's hitting .356 with 5 homers and 26 RBIs. Caleb Colpine, who went to Homestead, Fort Wayne, he's hitting .474, is knocked in 12. That's yeah, so they're putting up some numbers. IU Southeast, Brody Tanksley got some recognition in his conference last week. He's got 4 homers and 10 RBIs for the Grenadiers.
They're starting to come around. We knew they would.
Yeah. Well, the coach said, I don't care if we go 155. It's what we do in the postseason. I don't think he wants to go 155, but they'll turn it around. They'll get it done, considering that they, even though they're where they're located, they didn't get to practice outside all that much, before heading south. So Alex Rich is hitting .395 with 11 driven in at Grace. Bethel's Andrew Sarno's hitting .474, and Jake Schlasky has 10 runs driven in. Here you go. This is Bethel, too. Frank Plesac was a winner. In 3 starts over 17 2/3 inning, he's got 21 strikeouts, 5 walks. He's 2-1 with a 2.55 ERA. That's a pretty good start.
I hadn't heard. Is he related?
That's a
Is he related to Dan and Zach?
Nephew cousin.
Nice. Good tie-in. That's a hidden gem right there. That's a gem of the week.
Right.
Let's move on to JUCO, and not a lot going on. Ivy Tech, they're they got a new coach, and he's turning things around there, and including their scores on the web and things like that. So we don't have a lot to report on them. The one thing we have to report on Ancilla is it's Marion Ancilla now. I think I put that on there because otherwise I'm going to call them Ancilla forever. They're starting out 0-5. They got a lot of games. Junior college teams, that's another group that just plays a ton of games. And Vincent was 2-3 this week. I mean, overall, do we know what they did this week, Steve? I don't have it in front of me.
Vincennes, they beat Ancilla, Marion's Ancilla, and they beat South Suburban, which is up in the Chicago area, on Monday. And they were supposed to play Morton and Joliet today, but the weather's so. Yeah. I don't know that they got their games in today.
A lot of games got canceled. Notre Dame got canceled today. A lot of games across the country getting canceled.
Yeah, some of the games are way south. It's the rain, and of course, in Indiana, it might be the ice and snow. So.
Yep. Guys, hey, look at the time. I'm actually on track. Mark this down. Episode 6. Hardy the Hat guys finally on track.
That's what happens when you cut out 2/3 of the material.
That's right. Well, and this is only my sixth. This is only my 6th game too.
Yeah, we're all rooks here. Yeah, that's for sure.
So that brings us to, and I want you guys to give us a lead in on this. Brings us to our umpire special, and the Jeff, you and Steve headed this up, and what a great idea. And like I've said with a lot of our recordings in the past, man, it was difficult to get this down to a half an hour. I did have to cut a little bit out, but I think I got the general theme of all of it. And man, what a great conversation. I mean, Jeff, I don't know which one of these guys you reached out to, or if it was one of them or not, but you kind of had this idea originally early on when we started planning this back in July. Really, you really wanted to get into the umpire, and we were all absolutely on board with it, because I'll tell you what, and I want to have you guys comment on this as well. And this is where I lose my recognition for being on time, for talking about this ahead of time and going over. But I think this is important. This is worth spending some time and talking about, because there is a shortage of umpires, and it is a legit issue. We talked to Robert Faulkner at the IHSAA or IHSBCA this year, and he said it's an emergency status, and we'll hear that these guys talk about a lot of the reasons why, but also give some solutions to why. So Jeff, tell me about your what do you take from this, and what are some of the things that need to be accentuated or stressed before we listen to it, just to get across that idea that we're all trying to get across, which is umpiring is a good gig.
Well, being a former umpire myself, I still have my IHSAA license, but doing stats for Lafayette Jeff kind of keeps me busy, and of course it takes equipment, which I end up giving away a few years ago. But I keep my license just to keep up with the rules, so you get the rule book still sent to you every year. But I just came up with this idea in my stats that I do for Lafayette Jeff, Dan and Steve. I include, when the game's over, the names of the umpires. They are part of the game. It's just like basketball referees. Umpires are part of the game, and they need to be recognized. This is not this is a thankless job that they do. They don't get paid a lot of money. They do this job because they love the game of baseball. And so you talked about me bringing that up way back in July, when we were still talking about putting this show together. And I'll have to say, my batting average I had back in Little League, I was 0 for 4 last week to try and get umpires in the Lafayette area. I mean, I struck out and swung at another one on the way to the dugout. So I had to pass the bat on to Steve, and he came up 5 for 5 here, and I don't think he could have got 5 better guys. I mean, all of these guys just spit their guts out to us about some of the, the questions that we threw at them. They all had great answers, and these guys, you can just tell in their voice, or you will be able to tell in their voice, they're not doing this this gig for money. They're doing it for the love of the game. And I'm going to pass some more comments about it from Steve. He's the one that basically put these guys together. Nice job, Steve.
Well, I can't take all that credit because two of the five guys were our other teammates that aren't here tonight. Well, who we had was Tim Farwig and his son Augie, and Tim lives in Elkhart. Augie is in Indianapolis now, and Steve Kaiser's from South Bend, and he's done an ump for 43 years. I didn't think he was 43 years old. I'm just kidding, but he's been at it since like he was at high school, I think, or just out of high school. So he's done it a long time. Randy Heisner from Decatur. That's somebody that Mark set us up with, and Matt Richardson, who lives in Warsaw. That's somebody who Chris got. But all of them were good. They have different experiences in high school or college, and all the different perspectives. It was very educational sitting there talking to him. So I know people
and
gather from our
Kelly, it was neat to me the like Tim is primarily a Division I umpire now, and then Matt is, he does, I think he said he was going to do about maybe 80 to 100 high school games, but then he was going to do another 100 or
like it was in,
yeah. Then he was going to do another 150 or whatever summer games. So he's big in the summer circuit.
Right. He does like 200 plus games if you add them all together. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a good, if you've ever thought about getting into umpiring, take a listen to this. These guys go through every aspect of it, and they've got some funny stories along the way. Let's give it a listen.
I currently work collegiate level baseball, primarily at the Division I level. I am in my 22nd year of umpiring, and I started at the very lowest level of Little League, and I just kind of worked my way up. I was very fortunate in a lot of different opportunities, and I've just made the most of those, and that is currently where I'm at today.
I currently work, I like to say I'm the call-up guy in Division I, so I'm primarily Division II, but I do work Division I about 3 or 4 weekends a year. I think this is season 8, 9, I'm not really sure, but I did get my start. There's actually a real good photo of me at Bago Little League with orange shorts on, shin guards outside on the showing, and a chest protector outside, calling a strike 3 the wrong way. So that was my first game ever. I've gotten a little better since then, and been very fortunate to kind of have the mentors and people I've had in my life that have gotten me to where I'm at.
Retired a few years ago from full-time teaching. So I'm kind of semi-retired. I'm, got a couple of part-time gigs going on. I still coach high school cross country, cover high school sports part-time for my local paper, and umpire. Although I'm really starting to cut back on the umpiring quite a bit. I'm 64, and like I said, I got some other irons in the fire, but still plan on doing, 80 to 100 games this year, probably, when you consider the games in the summer and all that. I still remember my first game. I was the president of the Monmouth Little League, which is just outside of Decatur, and I was hiring umpires, and one night I just couldn't get anybody. And so I was kind of forced into it, and had no idea what I was doing, kind of like what Augie said. I'm sure I had my hat on backwards, and I know I had the shin guards outside, all the stuff I tell people not to do now, but that was my start.
Believe it or not, guys, this is my 43rd year I'm getting ready to start next week. Started out working my own little league level of games. My dad was the umpire in chief, so he stuck me on the bases. So that was the beginning of umpiring every summer, every spring, every fall with the Ryan Bowl camp. So right now I'm doing D3. Got a couple D2 midweeks, and work the NAIA, the JUCO, and still work high school.
This is my going on to be second collegiate year. This is my 17th year overall. I started when I was 15 years old, umpiring at the Peru Little League. Just making some extra cash on the side. I think it was like maybe $20, $25 a game. I umpire D3, NAIA, JUCO, high school right now, probably averaging the last couple of years between 200 and 250 games a year. Started off doing it because I love being around baseball, doing it with the kids, giving back to my community, and then kind of just became a hobby. And now it's just something that I really enjoy, and now it's part of my job.
250 games a year, and I know that all these guys on this panel work a lot of games. That sounds like more than a hobby.
Yeah, towards this, the summertime, and I try. I've got 3 kids of my own that are involved in 4 sports, so I try to be more involved with them as I can. But it seems like every weekend an umpire here, an umpire there, and I end up being wherever I can, helping out whenever I can because of the umpire shortage, and it's hard to find umpires, few and far between. So
I know that a lot of umpires go to camps to learn how to improve themselves. Tim knows something about that. Have you been involved and are continue to be involved with camps? Can you talk to us about your involvement in umpire camps?
Sure. I've been involved with several over the years. Primarily, I'm associated with just 2 now. One is based out of Michigan, which is the Bruce Doane camps, and that is primarily camps that are in the fall for umpires who are striving to move from the high school to the collegiate ranks. And the second one that I'm associated with is the CBUA, which is the Collegiate Baseball Umpires Alliance, which is actually the group that in the Midwest assigns most of the college games. And we have a rather large 4-man camp in the summer that is designed for umpires who are already working at the Division I level to be moved up into Power 5 conferences or other high mid-major conferences that use 4 umpire systems. So that's primarily what the 2 camps that I work with. But I mean, there are all types of camps and opportunities for umpires to learn at every level. It doesn't mean you don't need to attend a camp just to go from one level to the next. I've always preached that you should try to be the best umpire at the level you're at. And if that is going to be high school, there are camps out there for high school umpires to be better high school umpires and not trying to move up. So it's no different than in a normal job that you do training, or better, education to better yourself. Why wouldn't you approach it the same way as an umpire? That's kind of how we look at it.
Whether you deserve it or not, criticism is going to come your way. I say this about officials. People decide over their cornflakes what they're going to have to say about the umpire or the official that day, right or wrong. How do you deal with the criticism?
My hearing is below normal. If I hadn't had 2 operations on my ears, I would be reading your lips now. So fortunately, the operations work pretty well, but I definitely have low normal hearing. And so a lot of it I just don't hear. So that might be an asset.
That's a blessing, right?
Yeah. But other than that, you have to have some thick skin, and you have to, focus on the game, and you have to, maintain your body language and your confidence. And one thing I don't do, I never give fans the satisfaction of eye contact. Like, I'm not even going to turn around and look at somebody who's saying something. I mean, if someone gets threatening or violent or something like that, then, you can get the game manager to take care of that.
I think Randy kind of brought up a good point, is that body language and that confidence. I would be lying if I said I don't hear a lot of things that happen or, get said in the stands. I don't work, SEC baseball where I'm lucky enough to not hear it. So when there's only 10 people, it's pretty easy to hear what they say, especially if they want you to hear it. But it's all about poise. And if I kind of just control what I can control. If it's in between the fence, in between you're in the fence and in the field, coaches, players, personnel, whatever it might be, I can control that. So I'm going to control that. Fans, half the time they don't know what they're talking about, or they're just screaming to scream because you called strike 3 on their boy. So thick skin, I think, yeah, but it's more of you need the confidence and the poise and confidence in yourself just to take it and move along with it. And I sleep fine at night, no matter what they say.
Steve, you used the C word there, control. Do umpires need to, quote, take control of the game?
Usually they're in control. I mean, you don't want to let anything like happen in the basketball game over the weekend by any means. We had a situation a number of years ago in the regional, 2 schools, we darn near had a bench clearing brawl because a hitter got hit in the championship game. We had 2 teams that were conference rivals, 5 miles apart, didn't like each other. And yes, you got to take control. I mean, we had to get teams back in their dugouts, handle the situation. Our crew chief didn't issue any warnings, but we had to take control of this whole situation.
What do you see as some of the causes, and some of them are probably obvious, of why we have a shortage of umpires?
One of them that probably doesn't necessarily get discussed enough, it depends on your job. If you got some schools still out west of here in South Bend that start their games at 4:30 in the afternoon. If you're going to be at the site at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you got to drive a half hour, 45 minutes, you're leaving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no way you're going to be able to take off of work to go work a high school game that's going to start at 4:30. Some guys can only work certain areas because of the distance that they're going to have to drive from their regular job. And that's a big deal in high school sports.
And they need to start at that time because if they don't have lights, they need to start early enough in the early part of the season to have some daylight.
Yeah, it's just hard to get guys out of work. And for a number of years, a lot of educators were your primary umpires because they were getting out of school at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think, what we see with a shortage of officials, we're not doing a good job of replenishing officials. We have a lot of people, older officials that are retiring, and we're not bringing younger ones in. And a lot of that it's a couple things. I think it's one, the treatment of officials at the lower levels. I mean, you see crazy parents, you see videos online all the time, but just going past that is using that as an easy excuse. I think we as officials, and this is across every sport, this is not just baseball, do not do a good enough job of taking these first, second year high school, college kids, what they may be, and giving them the tools to be better officials. Now there's a group, United Umpires, that do all the umpires out of Grand Park for their summer stuff. They do an excellent job of training newer officials. They have a lot of online stuff, and they are seeing really good numbers and really good recruitment numbers and new people coming in every year. So I think that's the biggest key right now, is giving the tools to these young guys so that, when they are getting chewed out by a parent, just look the other way. Have, like I talked about earlier, have confidence in yourself that you know what you're doing. Who cares about them?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that I was going to bring up. I work for United Umpires during the summer. To piggyback off what Augie said, I mean, they do a great job of getting new umpires, training, retaining. But back to what you said, if you don't live near Indianapolis or Grand Park, it's like all these other umpires that are getting thrown to these, BPA and USSSA tournaments and stuff that don't have the training, that are just out there, to make extra money and whatnot. They're getting thrown to the wolves. They don't have the training. They're literally getting screamed and yelled at by coaches and fans that most of the time have no idea what they're talking about. And, it's just it's a bad recipe for disaster. And we're currently living that disaster with, the numerous officials that are retiring or, not coming back for their 15th, 17th year. They're calling it quits. So they're stopping what they're doing. And yet, kind of what Augie said, all these young officials that we should be, bringing in, they may have tried it one or two times and say, no, this isn't for me, because they got put in a bad situation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point just about the training. And I remember when I was hiring umpires for my little league, I was guilty of this. Just figuring the kid played some high school baseball, so I can hire him to umpire without giving him any training. And then Matt, you're right. They get out there, they get in a bad situation, and because they don't know what they're doing. And yeah, why would they come back? So I've tried to make up for my sins by putting on some free clinics here in Decatur and training some young guys and at least giving them, an introduction. So when they go out and do a little league game, they have an idea.
Steve and I come from the same local association, so we've been around for a long time. And when we first came in, getting a varsity game was not something, it wasn't going to happen. You had to, even though we had to go get our own games, the athletic directors knew you didn't have any experience yet. You needed to work the C games. You needed to work the JV games. And maybe you might get a varsity game within your first couple of years. We've got guys who are taking the test, passing the test, showing up to a meeting and getting 6, 7, 8 varsity games right off the bat with no training, no experience. And like everybody has touched on, a couple bad experience, that official's not going to be around after the end of the season. They're going to say, no, thank you, not worth it. So I think it's just a lot of different perspectives, but it really just boils down to is we're throwing in a lot of the new officials into just bad situations, like Matt said.
Is there much difference between NAIA and Division I or Division II and NAIA? Is it somewhat the same, or is it a little better, a little worse?
As an umpire, I try not to. I really try not to work any differently if I'm at IU one weekend or if I'm at, Ancilla College the next weekend. It's college baseball. These kids have worked their asses off in high school to get to this point, and it's not fair of us to say, oh, it's a Division III game or it's a JUCO game. They're not good enough for my best or whatever it might be. I think the biggest difference in umpiring, between Division I, starting to see it more at the Division II level now, and even a little at Division III, is just the TV. It's hard not to find a Division I game on, not on ESPN3, ESPN Plus, whatever it might be. So there's an added pressure as an official now. You're not going to by or you miss something and not be found. So.
I believe there is more pressure because now you can be held accountable. There is evidence at all times. And just like what we've seen in football, that if a crew misapplies a rule, that all of a sudden they're suspended the next weekend. We are now seeing that at the Division I level. So not a judgment call, but if you misapply a rule in a big situation, it's quite possible that you will not work the following weekend. You will be taken off your assignments and be replaced. So there is that added pressure. Not everybody has adopted replay at the college level, although they're allowed to now have that capability. But even that, and I don't know how many of these guys can attest to this, but the replay manual for baseball is 20 to 25 pages long. And there's all these different scenarios of, if this happens, then you got to do that. And we're expected to go into the replay booth and within 2 minutes do all that and come out with the right answer again, or be held accountable for misapplying replay. So I think there is a lot of pressure with the technologies coming. I will say jokingly, there are some days I wish there was an earphone or in my ear telling me ball or strike, and I didn't have to think about it. Although in that case, believe it or not, you actually still had to judge the pitch in case the system went down at that moment. So, it's evolving, and it does affect how we work and how we view things. There's still a lot of debate, like they have in football. Do you work a play knowing you have replay and go a certain way, knowing that you can turn it over, or do you call it like you think you saw it and then just go from there? So, I mean, that's a big debate right now. Officiate to replay is what they call it, basically.
How much preparation you got, whether you're thinking about the game, when you're driving to the game? How much pregame time are we talking about?
For college games, they expect you to be there at least an hour before. And I mean, that's the latest you would get there. And so that gives you, quite a bit of time to talk to your partner. I think about it on my drive too. You think about the teams you have, maybe even do a little bit of research, find out if there's been bad blood between these teams. I know last spring I had a doubleheader between two teams and on a Saturday, and there'd been trouble on Friday. And luckily I knew one of the umpires from Friday, and he gave me a heads up. And so my partner and I, came up with a plan, what we were going to say at the plate meeting, all those kinds of things. So that was part of our preparation. But even in a normal circumstance, you're going to at least review mechanics and talk about what your theories. I mean, everybody should have the same mechanics, obviously, but they're just little things that you like to reassure your partner about, so that when you get on the field, like, you don't have any questions about whether your partner's going to be here or he's going to be there for you, whatever. What kind of signals you're going to use, that kind of thing.
On the last point, we talked about the added pressure with more exposure and more TV. That's also a plus for us, because now I can go back, I'll work, 2:00 game, and I can go back to the hotel that night and watch my plate game and really evaluate myself. So I think it's preparation for your game that day or that weekend you're going into, but it's also preparation for next weekend by seeing, maybe you remember you missed that pitch in the 4th inning, go back and see it, or was my head too low? Was I not in the slot, et cetera? So it's also part of the preparation, and also getting yourself in the rule book. We used to, I don't know if we still do. We still had weekly quizzes, nothing mandatory, but it was good just to get yourself in a situation that might happen. And they also do videos throughout the year. Something might have happened that past weekend, which, could kind of spark something.
What about moving up the ranks from high school to college to pro, or from sectional to regional, semi-state, work to state finals? I assume that everybody wants to move up and has moved up, but how does that process work at the high school level in Indiana?
Up until last year, I hadn't worked anything above a 14, 15U game from my summer experience. And I had gotten in contact with a couple people, and I was invited to the United Umpires evaluation they had. I got myself in front of the right people. And those two people happened to be Danny Jimenez and Darren Brown. And they asked me if I wanted to umpire college baseball. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So, they gave me some games last year and kind of got started, and got some high school games shortly right after that, towards the end of the year, because they were short umpires. And this year, I've got quite a few collegiate and high school games this year. I think I've 45, 50 games total. So, I mean, I didn't really start somewhere. I just kind of got thrown into a position, and that's how I got here.
I think Matt's story is pretty much spot on. We always say you don't get invited to work college by sitting on your couch and doing nothing. Those phone calls don't happen. You have to go out, at least the way it works today, you have to go out and be seen by those assigners. They work for the conferences. They don't work for the umpires. So the people they're putting on the field, they have to have some confidence in. And if they've never seen them, it makes it very hard to be assigned. So that's really how it works now, at least in moving up in the collegiate level, is you have to go to the camps, the clinics, the evaluation clinics, whatever that might be. And you need to be seen by those assigners. And that's how they evaluate their people now.
if you work a high school schedule and you're seen in so many different high-level games or regions, then the more coaches that can see you and appreciate what you do, that's going to help you, is it not?
So the high school tournament, we have 50% is your own personal information. 50% is what we call a school vote. So working the more schools gives you a little more exposure. Once they total up your numbers, they place you at the sectional, and if you work a certain amount of sectionals, you go up to a regional if you qualify, and I'm working semi-state and state. It might take you 10 years working a tournament before you get down to state.
I know at one point that there was a system where you didn't necessarily work the state each and every year, giving other guys a chance. I don't know if that's still in place.
So right now, the IHSA, if you worked the state last year, you will go back this year. So you got 8 guys that went last year with 16 umpires total. You'll have 8 guys that were there last year, 4 guys that have prior been to the state finals, and 4 guys that have never been to the state finals.
Anything you think could improve the game?
And I've got one, is this kind of an overall thing? Like, I wish there would be a big committee that would look at the different rule sets and try to make them a little more consistent.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, umpiring different level of baseball with different associations that, kind of favor different, rule sets, whether it's federation or, collegiate or whatever. It's like, if there was a set handbook on, say, hey, these are the majority of the rules that we're going to use that are all the same. I mean, I think that would make, umpiring a little bit easier. I think it'd make it a little bit easier on everybody else as well. But, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So,
No, probably not.
I've heard it said over the years that the umpire needs to sell his call. Is that true? And if so, could you talk a little bit about that?
It's certain situations. Yeah, you got to sell the call. It kind of goes back to what, the overall theme, I think, of a lot of stuff I said is that confidence and that poise on the field. You got a bang, bang whacker, half stepper at first base, and you just come up with a soft, he's out. Everyone's gonna be like, did he even see it? Like, it was bang, bang, So yeah, you got to put a little umph in that call. And especially, on odd calls, I think, I think back, Jeff, you were talking about the Aviators. 5 years ago or so, I was working there, and we had a runner's lane interference where actually the winning run would have scored had there not been interference. And I came out of my shoes. I'm a tall guy, but I think I touched that water slide that night when I called that, because, everyone in the ballpark needs to know that you saw that, because they did it. And they're going to say, what the heck? But, with, like we said, with the video and stuff, if your signer goes back and sees, Augie came out of his shoes selling that call, you're going to look like $1 million. But, you don't need to sell every call, though. If it's, a 4-step, there's no need to come out of your shoes on that one.
If we've got some young guys that have aspirations of becoming an umpire, where do they need to start?
The IHSA does have a Mentee mentor program going right now. And in the last week, I've kind of been assigned 2 different mentees, neither of which are young. One, believe it or not, is 70. And the other one I want to say is also a retiree. So not only do we need the young guys, but now we're getting retirees that are probably looking for something to do to stay in the ballgame. That helps us out with our shortage. But the mentee mentor relationship, if for the IHSA, it's almost like you have to contact the IHSA before you do everything to get the program set up. And they're really putting a push on that.
Yeah, that's crucial to have a mentor. I had 2. I was so bad I needed 2. So the guys I still call, on the way home from a game, say, wow, here's what happened. How would you have handled this? That's just crucial. And I tried to do that for younger guys. I had a guy last summer. I was thrilled. It was that same tournament I was talking about, local tournament, 11, 12-year-olds. And I met my partner that I was going to have all day. And the first thing he said to me was, hey, listen, I've worked a lot of games, but I've never really had any training. Like, you tell me what I'm doing wrong. I almost hugged him. It's like, yeah, great attitude. And sure enough, like, he listened, he got better throughout the day. And this year he got his high school license, and he's going to be a great umpire because he has that kind of attitude.
Give me the first maybe one that comes to your mind, and I'll just open it up to anybody, of one of those fun coach interactions where it was, if the fans heard what was really going on there, they'd get a different story.
I'll speak to that real quick. And this just happened in a conference tournament, the Missouri Valley last year. And we're working replay. And this was late in the tournament. I was at second base, and there was a bang play. And right now, including this year in college, we have COVID policy where the coach cannot cross the foul line to discuss a play with you. So the head coach from Dallas Baptist came out to the line and was telling the first base umpire, I want to talk to him. So they're like, hey, come over here. He wants to talk to you. And I ran over, and he goes, what'd you have there? And I go, out. He goes, should I go to replay on it? And I go, I think you'd be wasting your time. He goes, okay, good. I'm just wanted to ask. And then turned around and went back to the dugout. I mean, I don't know if he really wanted my opinion, but, and I've had that several times. I've had coaches come out and go, look, I know you got this right. But I have to look like I'm sticking up for my kids. So what do you want to talk about for the next minute or so? And then I'll just walk away and we'll be all good. So, I mean, it happens. I mean, it really does. But nowadays, again, with technology, you got to make sure your lips aren't being read by, this is sad. We have gotten to the habit of when umpires get together, we take our hat off and cover our mouths so nobody can read our lips on TV.
Yeah, you're going to end up on a John Boy highlight. And that
exactly.
Oh man, you're telling me.
You probably saw the issue this weekend on the college scene where the umpire, the first base ump, throws his hands up and the guy hits a game-winning home run. And the first baseman, the funny part is the first baseman saying, no, he's pointing to the ump. And you can almost see the ump saying, no, shut up, kid. Nobody will see it. And has there been one of those moments where, and again, maybe thinking back to the interaction you had with the coach, and you're like, man, yeah, I just totally buffed that one. One of those interactions where you got to humble yourself a little bit, where, I mean, it wasn't even a close call. How do you deal with that situation where, like, you know what, I'm human, I missed that one?
Yeah, I had that on a hit by pitch one time. I had a ball, in on the hands. It's hard to tell if it hit his hands or hit the bat. And I thought, how did it go? The ball was in foul territory, and I called it foul. And then it trickled back fair. That's what it was. So I called it a foul ball because in my judgment, it came off the bat. But I shouldn't have called it so soon because it trickled back fair. The pitcher comes in, picks it up, throws the guy out. And I'm hoping that nobody saw me put my hands up, right? But the offensive coach comes out and says, Randy, you threw your hands up. I said, oh, you saw that, huh? Says, yeah. So my guy, okay. So my guy run because you threw your hands up. And so I had to go over to the other coach and tell him, like, yeah, you don't get an out on that because I called a foul. And I know I screwed it up. And fortunately, it wasn't a close game, and the guy was pretty good-natured about it. But then that's one of those times, I'm sure the other guy is going to attest to this. There are times when you just say, please don't get a hit now because, and this is a guy who his previous time up had hit a 2-run homer, and he didn't get a hit. So I was kind of off the hook. But, the baseball guys are smiling at me, I guess.
Fellas, wasn't that exciting? I tell you what, Jeff and I talked about that for a little bit earlier today, just on what a great interview that was, just listening to those guys talk. What a wealth of information.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was wonderful.
I'd have to say all those guys were class acts, probably on and off the field. You could just tell by their voice. They love the game. They're not doing it for the money. Dan and Steve they're class people.
Absolutely. And there's a level of professionalism there that, and that kind of segues into our final out, because there's a level of professionalism there. Good men, and they're good at what they do. February 27th, 2022. This was episode 6 of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. If you're just tuning in for this, the final out, make sure you go to baseballacrossindiana.com to see our full episode. This is today's final out. This week was a tough one for baseball across Indiana. We lost a good one, and that is Bob Shenkin, the head coach for Munster High School. There are a lot of ways to measure success. Bob Shenkin had plenty of it in the common measure of success for coaches. In over 30 years of coaching, he had just under 700 wins, was a 2016 inductee into the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame. He was the coach of Hal Morris, who had a very successful major league career. Then there are other ways to measure success. And one I want to highlight involves a formula that you can use as a measure of joy in your life. And that's the end game, right? We want to win. We want winning success because it's more fun than losing. But consider this. If your measure of success is based on what others do for you, then you are not in control of your success. Likewise, if your measure of joy in life is based on how others treat you, then you are not in control of your joy. You're not holding the steering wheel. Here's a better way, and one that by account of every coach I've talked to about Bob Shenkin, just in the last few days and stuff I've seen online, is one that he excelled at, and that is this. If you measure your success based on what you bring to others instead of the other way around, now you are in control of your success. Equally, if you measure your joy in life on the joy that you bring to other people as opposed to the other way around, then you are the one in control of your joy. You're holding the steering wheel. Last week on the final out, I talked about ownership in things. This week, we remember a man, Bob Shenkin, and how he took ownership of his success and joy by contributing to those around him, by making their lives better, by making them better at what they do. Coach Shenkin was in control of his success. So as we close things out today, let's remember this as we remember the life of Bob Shenkin. You have the ability to control your success and joy in life, but it starts by knowing it's not about you. Have a good week, folks.